Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here. So I know it's late where I am. It may be late where you are. And normally I don't go live this late, but I have been working on this episode all day. So earlier today, an episode of Kel Lowry's podcast, Fairly Famous, came out. And I listened to it this morning. And one thing that I realized very quickly when I was listening to the podcast was that Gypsy Rose Blanchard, the version of events that she was telling on the podcast was not matching the version of events that she had told previously on the documentary, The Prison Confessions of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, her when she appeared on the Vial Files podcast, her on The View, just various interviews that she has done since before she was released from prison. And since she has been released from prison, her story has changed. And I literally picked up on that within the first maybe 7-8 minutes into the podcast. I was like, oh, wow, I remember something different at some point. At some other interview, I remember her saying something different, and I had to find it. So I listened to Kel's podcast with Gypsy probably 3 times, just going through everything. And then I went back and I watched the Prison Confessions of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. I watched the Vial Files podcast. I was watching her on The View just to try to find all these different versions of events that she has talked about of her life and her story, right? And one thing that I know is if you're telling the truth, the story doesn't change. Little details, and I've just really come to realize this since studying body language, because one thing that they teach you when you study body language and nonverbal communication is they also teach you how to pick up on the way how somebody will say something, the way they will say something, or even, okay, like Spidey from the behavioral arts, he talks about how if you're telling the truth, all the important details will be the same, right? So, like, it may go from, oh, when she was in jail, not long after the event happened, oh, I left at 2 o'clock in the morning, to, 8 years later, when she's released and she's doing an interview, to, it was around midnight or it was after midnight. Something like that can happen. Not remembering the time specific, but big details on how you left the house, who took you somewhere when you first ran away, if you knew that the gun that you were shooting your mom with was a BB gun versus if you didn't know that it was a BB gun and you thought you were about to kill her, those details do not change over time. That's the details that they're not going to change, right? And I keep saying that my hair is kind of crazy right there and it's driving me crazy. But I went through and I got I listened to the podcast and I have clips from the podcast where she said one thing and then clips from her on the documentary where she says something different. So we're going to go over them. And I don't even have everything. I don't even have everything because I've been working on this all day. And finally I said, you know what? I'm just going to do what I got and we're going to go live, because it probably would have took me until Monday if I'd have went with everything. But just a couple of the things that okay. And here's the thing. The interview that she's doing on Kel's podcast is about her book. Her book was released a couple of days ago. I think it was on December 10th. I've not gotten the book. I've not listened to the audio. I really just haven't had time. And I've kind of went back and forth on whether or not I want to get it. I've had a lot of people tell me, hey, why don't you get it and listen and do a review over it? Because I don't want to get it. I don't want to support Gypsy. So I've contemplated doing that, right? Kel has gotten the book. Kel has read the book. Kel invites Gypsy on her podcast because Kel is, a big book nerd. She has this book club. But one thing that I noticed very quickly, I do have a P.O Box, Colby. Can one of my mods put my P.O Box in the chat? So one of the things that I recognize very quickly is Kel is not super familiar with Gypsy's case. As not as familiar as I am, clearly, because I knew very early on the Gypsy was telling different stories. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to jump into it. You guys work with me with the audio. So some of the audio is coming from good quality and some not so much. So the audio kind of does jump around. but I think you should be able to hear everything. We're going to go ahead. We're going to jump in to this. Let's see. Where is it? Can I find it? Okay, it's here. We're going to jump in to the different parts because Kale even said, she said, I feel like we know everything. So, like, what's to put in the book? I feel like we know everything. Well, Gypsy did. Wow, what is going on with my hair? Or she said something along the lines of, I thought we knew everything. I thought we knew everything, but now here come some different things that we didn't know about. Well, one thing that Gypsy mentions in this book is that she was on a baby bottle until she ran away. Well, not even until she ran away, until they unalived her mom. She was on a baby bottle. And she was on a baby bottle. And I'm like, hell no. I call BS quick, fast, and in a hurry. Because this would have been one thing that Dee Dee really used to paint Gypsy as a mental child. If Gypsy was still on a bottle, that would have been something that Dee Dee would have highlighted that. She would have had Gypsy in photos with a bottle. She would have had Gypsy, in her wheelchair at the movies with a bottle. I'm calling BS. I feel like every detail of Gypsy's life that garnered sympathy, we know already. So I'm curious as to why this was added. I mean, I personally think that it's a lie. So I got to meet Gypsy tonight at her book signing. Did you? I literally listened because where she's doing her book signing is like 3 hours for me. I considered it. But I was like, no, I'm not going to. I got kids. It's a lot. So I can't do that. But I absolutely think that this is a complete lie about the bottle. And I highlight some reasons why when we're listening to this. Okay. So let's go ahead. And this is just my opinion. But let's go ahead. Let's take a listen to this compilation that I put together of lies that Gypsy told on the podcast. All right,
in the book you talk about.
We're going to start with the baby bottle.
In the book you talk about your baby bottles, and I don't think that I ever heard that in like the headlines or the shows or the documentaries. Is that something that is exclusive to this book?
It is. It's not something that I really tell everybody or talk about because, I mean, it's pretty embarrassing.
I'm going to say, she said it's pretty embarrassing. There are pictures online of her in a bathtub, in a sink, at probably what's 14, 15, 16 years old, in a sink. There is so much out there that she has put out there. She admitted in the prison documentary that she wore diapers, So I am like, because you were embarrassed? Or like, you have put out so much that, in my opinion, one will be embarrassed over. So I'm calling BS on this a little bit, you guys.
Are you comfortable talking about it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's in the books.
Okay. In the book, you talk about having a baby bottle, and up until the night of the crime, you were packing a baby bottle in your bag.
Correct.
What was that about? Can you talk about it?
Well, my mom never weaned me off the baby bottle.
Like, we're talking a bottle with nipples.
Yes,
Because you talk
like
about bringing change.
Bottle. Yes. So, I was given formula through the feeding tube, but also my comfort. I never like took to a stuffed animal or a blankie or anything, but I loved the bottle.
Okay.
And so,
okay, she tells Kale that she never took to a stuffed animal or a blankie or anything. Now, I want to note here that I was like, I know when I heard her tell Kale, I never took to a stuffed animal or a blanket. I was like, wait, she just said a few minutes ago that she had. I was like, you know what? I'm going to finish listening to the rest of this and I'll go back and find it. Could not find it until I had this edited. And so at the 26-minute mark in the interview with Kale, she says that her mom, her stuffed animals, they were her everything because she did not have any interaction with anybody else. So she literally We know that she was obsessed with stuffed animals, but all of a sudden, no, it was not stuffed animals. It was her bottle. Never heard this before.
So, like strawberry Pediasure was my favorite.
Mhm.
And my mom never said, "Oh, you're too old for that."
Okay.
She just let me continue on the bottle.
Sure.
To the point where I think that that's why my teeth were buck teeth. My original teeth were bucked and just out of alignment.
Sure.
Um, but even up until the night before the crime, I was still very much like that was my source of comfort, you know? So it's like I'm addicted to narcotics and I'm also sucking on a baby bottle to give me comfort.
That is so hard for me to wrap my head around. How do
Mhm.
you feel about that when you think about it?
It's
I also want to note I'm putting photos. These are photos that were taken after, they when they found Dee Dee. There were no bottles in the house. I went through all the crime scene photos, everything. There's not a bottle on the nightstand next to where she sleeps, not on Dee Dee's side, not on Gypsy's side, not in the kitchen. Nowhere could I find a bottle in a photo in that house.
it's very bizarre. It's very bizarre now looking back on it.
But in
But that was my normal.
right, so during that time, you
Mhm.
didn't know any different.
No, like that was my normal.
What is people's reaction similar to mine, where it's just like you truly are addicted to narcotics and drinking out of baby bottle?
Yeah, it's two ends of a spectrum, and somehow I landed right between them.
And then the night of the crime happens, and then you couldn't take the baby bottle to prison.
Right, no.
So what was that like? Was it sort of like a cold turkey cut off the bottle sort of deal?
Correct. Like, I had taken the narcotics.
Hmm.
I didn't pack a baby bottle.
So in the book, you talk about having a baby bottle, and up until the night of the crime,
Mhm.
you were packing a baby bottle in your
Correct,
bag.
correct.
So she literally says earlier in this podcast, when Kale says you were packing the baby bottle, she said, correct. Yes. And then 5 minutes later, she says, well, I didn't pack the baby bottle that night. So it's like from minute to minute, she's getting confused on what she's saying.
I just kind of left my old life behind.
So yeah, despite not knowing that it was unusual, because she said it was normal. She had no idea that it was unusual for a 20-something-year-old to be drinking out of a bottle, right? She had no idea. Despite not knowing that it was unusual and it being her comfort, she didn't take the bottle with her. Um, Also, all the pictures of her in the hospital after surgeries, before surgeries, her mom never brought a bottle for her. Never do we see a bottle in the bed with her. We see stuffed animals, but no bottles. Also, in the documentary Prison Confessions of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, there were nurses and doctors that were interviewed. Doctors talked about how she was very childlike, that she talked like a small child, that she talked about things like a small child. Like she talked about Disney movies, she talked about princesses. She would dress like a princess. So that's why they believed that something was really mentally wrong with her, because the way that she acted. Not one doctor or nurse said, and she had a bottle. She had stuffed animals all the time, but she never had a bottle. So I'm calling it BS on this. The thing about it is Gypsy is writing this book. She needed something to add that we haven't heard about already, right? So that's why I think this bottle situation is coming into play here. It's because it's the same song and dance. We know everything. So she had to add something in there for shock value to be like, what? We didn't know that. And that's the one thing that we can say, wow, we didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I think she added the bottle situation in there. Let's continue. Let's talk about Dan. There's going to be 2 clips of Dan. Let's talk about Dan because she switches up their relationship. She switches up the relationship that she had with Dan. It goes from, we were friends. I thought he was cute. He probably thought I was cute. to, oh, it was a sexually charged relationship, to, um, he wanted to run away with me and take me to his farm in Arkansas. That was the plan. So, Dan's lies are all over the place when it comes to, what she's saying about Dan.
And Dan was an adult that you met at a convention.
Correct.
And you guys had a romantic interest in each other?
I mean, I had a crush on him.
Right.
And I think he thought that I was cute, but it wasn't to the point where it was a relationship.
But then there was that part of it that was kind of sexually charged. I thought that it was a possibility that he could be the one that would take me away from this existence living with my mother. I thought, this is my knight in shining armor.
Okay, but you guys maybe had it a little.
So she thought he was her knight in shining armor, but they were just friends?
Little bit of an interest, a fling.
I was like, he's cute.
How old is he? How old was he?
He was 36.
And he thought you were how old?
15.
My mother lied about my age when I thought that I was 15. I found my Medicaid card and it said that I was actually 19. At that time, I met this guy, Dan, at Vision Con, and he kept telling me, you're an adult and you can leave. And so I ran away.
Okay, so in the prison documentary, she says she thought she was 15. She found documentation stating that she was 19. She confronted her mom. It was around that time she met Dan. And so when she's telling Dan about everything, Dan's saying, you're an adult, you can leave. So did Dan think she was 15?
I thought that it was a possibility that he was the one.
So that would be a pedophile, right?
I don't like saying that word. I don't like
That would
labeling
be,
someone anything. I don't like labels put on me, so that's why I don't put labels on
Okay,
other people.
fair.
That's-
Okay.
Okay, Gypsy, I'm going to really call BS on this. You're pregnant with a baby girl. Okay, so what's the truth here? We don't know. Gypsy tells us on Barely Famous that Dan knew she was 15 and he was 36. She tells us on the prison documentary that he was telling her, you're an adult, you can leave, right? So that she met him after she found out she was 19, right? But if what Kale is responding to is the 15 and 36, Kale is responding to the 15 and the 36 saying, oh, that's like pedo vibes, right? And I'm disappointed in Kale. And first off, obviously disappointed in Gypsy, but disappointed in Kale here as well, because Gypsy's like, I'm not going to say that. I don't want to label anybody because I don't like being labeled. I'm sorry, darling. Some people deserve the label. And if he was 36 and you went and stayed the night with him and you slept in his bed and he had plans to take you to Arkansas to his farmhouse, then yeah, that's pedo behavior. That's it. That's what it is. Why are we shying away from calling it out? Because you don't like to label people. You don't have no problem labeling Nicholas Godejohn as the unaliver of your mother. You have no problem labeling Ryan Anderson as ABUSIVE or a hoarder. You've labeled people, but now all of a sudden you don't want to label Dan. Why? Is it because you knew that Dan thought you were 19 and you feel like that would be unfair? Like, what is really happening here? I'm confused. Let's continue.
Okay, but it's questionable. It's definitely questionable behavior. So you meet Dan, and you still drank from a bottle at this time, and you pack the bottle to go to Dan's house. Did he already know this?
He didn't know. I didn't tell him a lot. I didn't tell him I had a feeding tube. I didn't tell him about necessarily how weird my life was and how different it was.
And slowly, after a few months, I started to tell him more and more about my home life. He was the very first person that I ever told that I could walk.
Okay, now someone commented on my page and they said that they read the book and that Gypsy said that Dan was the first person that she told she couldn't walk, and then she later said that Nicholas was the first person or the only person that she ever told she couldn't walk. I haven't read the book yet, so I'll cross that bridge when I get there. If she lied in the book as well, you got editors and stuff like that. Like, surely she's not lying, like saying a lie in the book, telling a story in the book, and then later on, a few pages later, telling a different story, and somebody did not catch that. Yeah, 19 is still a baby compared to 36. I mean, yeah, for sure. I'm like Kale. When Gypsy said, "Oh, I don't like to label people," you should have been like, "Nah, girl, 15 and 36, that's definitely not okay." Why not say that? Why not say, "No, no, 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 that's definitely not okay." Kale has a daughter. Gypsy's about to have a daughter. Nobody would be okay with their 15-year-old having a sexually charged relationship with a 36-year-old.
It was a relief to me to be able to confide in someone, and he seemed really sweet.
There was certain things that came up in conversations, like I could walk, and obviously because I ran away that night.
Yeah.
But he was oblivious to a lot of what was going on.
And Dan was an adult that you met at a convention.
Correct.
And you guys had a romantic interest in each other?
I mean, I had a crush on him.
Right.
And I think he thought that I was cute, but it wasn't to the point where it was a relationship.
Okay. But you guys maybe had a little bit of an
Yeah,
interest, a fling.
I was like, he's cute.
How
And so we created this plan that I was going to leave home and he was going to take me to his farm in Arkansas.
was this to Dan's where you asked the neighbor?
That was the first time. So that was with Dan. Yeah.
Okay.
That was,
So he's in the hospital. Okay. So you just knock on some random person's door?
I did. So it was the community, the housing community that was right on the side of the Habitat for Humanity community.
Okay.
So it was literally up the street.
Okay.
And I knock on the first person's door that I see.
And you're like, I'm
like, I called him my boyfriend.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, my boyfriend is in the hospital. Can I get a ride?
They didn't know who you were?
They didn't know who I was.
Did they think you were on drugs?
I probably looked like I was.
Like, what did they say to you?
They're like, okay. I mean, it was a nice man. It was probably like 2:00 in the morning. And he gave me the ride. But
He took you?
yes.
And then you get to the hospital and you're like, hey, Dan, what's up?
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, if I was Dan, I'd be weirded out by that. Like, I've been talking to you on the internet. I'm in the hospital and you're there all of a sudden. What? Now, in the documentary, she says that Dan said, let's run away together tonight. In the documentary, she says, Dan texted me and said, can tonight be the night we run away? So she went to his house. Here, she leaves that out completely, and she says she just popped up on Dan at the hospital. That's weird. Yes, Duchess, yes, absolutely. I think she's very much like her mom. She can target people that can be easily persuaded, easily manipulated. I guess Kale's buying, and I guess it's because Kale doesn't know enough of the story to know any better. I don't know. Let's continue.
And y'all just hung out in the hospital?
Yeah, well, he was released within 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And so his cousin was there with him. And
right.
So his cousin had drove us back to the friend's house that he was staying at.
Okay. And they also didn't know who you were, like what your story was?
They were asleep when we got there. It wasn't until the morning where the man, the husband, comes in the room and asks me my name. Mm-hmm. And stupid as all I can be, I'm like, Gypsy, I'm Dan's girlfriend. I'm so stupid.
Yeah. And then he's like, your mom's here.
Yeah, an hour later, your mom's here.
It was late at night.
Okay, now here's the prison documentary story that she told. And I'm sorry about the audio on the documentary. I know it's not that great. I'm sorry.
It was about 2 a.m. And I hitchhiked to his friend's house.
Oh, she hitchhiked all of a sudden. So the nice old man that lived down the street didn't take her. She hitchhiked all of a sudden. Okay.
That's when he tells me that he was on parole and couldn't leave the state. And it's about 8:00 in the morning. She arrives close to the ground. And I see her walk in the door.
Okay, so that story changed completely to she walked to her neighbors. And if I really want to get in depth to it, she said, or in depth, she said that she had a cell phone, that it was hers, that she had snuck and bought, not on Kel's podcast, but on Prison Diary. She had a cell phone. That's how she was talking to Dan. So Dan texted her and said, can tonight be the night that you run away? We run away together. So she went to, she hitchhiked, right? On Prison Documentary, she said she hitchhiked and went straight to the house. Now, on Kale's podcast, she says that she went to the neighbor's house and the neighbor drove her to the hospital because Dan was at the hospital. And then Dan's cousin brought them back to Dan's house, and he had a roommate at the time or whatever. She says on Kale's podcast that she was awakened by the roommate saying, who are you? And she's like, Dan's girlfriend, Gypsy. And he walks out, I guess, and an hour later, he comes and says, your mom's here. Well, the other version of events is she, I'm getting it mixed up. Give me a second. The other version of events is that, she hitchhiked to the house, got there. He told her he's on probation, so he can't leave the state. They go to sleep, and she's awakened the next morning by the guy saying, your mom is here. No, hey, how are you? What's your name? Just all of a sudden, your mom's here. She says when she gets home, her mom, and she also says that her phone fell out of her backpack. She says her phone fell out of her backpack and her mom found it, saw the messages between her and Dan. That's how she knew who she was with. Then later she says that when she got home, she says, my mom smashed my phone and my laptop. My phone and my laptop. However, earlier in the prison confessions, she says it was her mom's phone. I mean, literally, I remember a time where I was under the impression from watching interviews with Gypsy, where I thought that she had no access to any internet. And the only way she was able to get access is because when they were at the store, she managed to sneak money out of her mom's wallet and buy a phone, and that she had to hide it. But now we're learning that there was laptops, there were cell phones. Her mom allowed her on the computer. She just wasn't supposed to be doing anything, talking to anybody, but she was. And now I really do wonder if Dee kept her from talking to anyone, or if Dee was you can have a Facebook, whatever. Just don't be talking to crazy people. I don't know. Now I really wonder how much Gypsy was allowed to do that she's lied about. I don't know. Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. Thank you. All right, now let's talk about the BB gun, because this story is completely different. And this story is important because Gypsy tells us on the Nick Viles podcast that she's not an unaliver. She could never unalive her mom. That's why she got Nick to do it, because she couldn't do it. However, on the prison confessions, she says she shot her mom with a BB gun, and she had no idea that it was a BB gun. She thought it was a real gun, and she was shocked when she realized it was a BB gun. However, on Kale's podcast, she says, I knew it was a BB gun. There's been reports that I didn't, but that's not true. I did. Well, the reason there's reports that you didn't know it was a BB gun, Gypsy, because it came out of your mouth. Let's watch.
So did that first attempt give you almost like a hope that you're like, okay, I didn't do this right the first time. I could do it the second time.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I make certain differences. So, I pack a bag in the middle of the night. I'm going to attempt to leave to just go anywhere, because at that point I hadn't texted with Dan, so I had no idea where he was.
Okay.
But I was just gonna run
and just see where
I was gonna be homeless. I didn't care what I had to do. I was just gonna go.
But that one failed as well.
It failed as well. She found my backpack. And that's whenever there was a standoff, and that's whenever I shot her with the BB gun.
Okay, so that is actually the next question I have
Mhm.
is why did your mom have the BB gun to begin with? Why did she buy that from Walmart?
So she had bought that because she had told me it was to keep Dan away.
After this attempt, she was very sensitive to when I would move in the bed. And she kept a knife by her bedside table. And she threatened me that if I was to attempt to run away, I would be.
So
Did you think it was a
Okay, so she tells Kale that her mom got the gun after her attempt to run away and threatened her with it. On prison confessions, she says nothing about that gun until later, but she says that her mom kept a knife by her bed and threatened her with the knife.
real gun?
I know. I
You
knew
knew it was a
I
BB
knew
gun.
it was a BB gun.
Okay.
Which
Did you think it was a real gun?
I know. I
You
knew
knew it was a
I
BB
knew
gun.
it was a BB gun.
Okay.
Which in certain documentaries and transcripts and stuff like that, some people are like, "Oh, well, she didn't know it was a BB gun." No, I knew it was a BB gun.
Okay.
So
So you didn't think it was going to kill her or anything?
No, no.
Okay. And when you shot her with it, it was to scare her or did you think it would kill her?
Oh no, it was just a scare.
Okay. Okay.
She normally kept the gun in a safe in her bedroom, but she had used it to practice shooting earlier that week. And that's when I grabbed the gun and I threatened her with it. And before I knew it, I pulled the trigger as many times as I could. When I shot my mother, I just remember thinking like, oh my God, did I just do that? What did I just do? A couple of them hit her, a couple of them hit the wall, but the wounds were superficial. It barely grazed her. That's when I realized it was a BB gun.
Don't associate.
Say what? That's when you realize it was a BB gun. Once again, you guys, I'm sorry for the audio fluctuating. I tried to even it out, but whenever I uploaded it to YouTube, it was all over the place. I do apologize. But let's continue.
Associate myself as a murderer because if you think about it, yes, I had a part to play in it. I asked Nick for help.
Was it you or him that started coming up with this new plan, which is her not around at all?
It was me. It was my idea. I suggested the gun. And he said that a gun would be too loud, that it would alert the neighbors.
Okay, so something's funny. That's funny is Gypsy constantly downplays her involvement in court. At Nicholas's trial, she stood up and she said, "I asked him to do it. I came up with it. I told him to do it." She said all these things. There's even the videos of her walking in the house, showing him like where to go. This is, mom's room, mom's bed. And she does like a stabbing motion. But as time goes on, she distanced herself from her part in it to her being more of a victim. I just asked him for help and he said he would help. And there was an evil side of him. He's the one that's been wanting to kill somebody. He's always had a fantasy of killing somebody. I didn't tell him he had to do that. That's what he wanted to do. And I was just so desperate to get away that I let him do it. But in the documentary, she says she had an idea of a fire to set the house on fire. They decided to go against that. She had the idea of a gun. He said it'd be too loud. The neighbors would hear and call the cops. So they decided against that. So then they decided for the knife. She said this was her idea. She downplays everything. As time goes on, she gets further and further and further and further away from it. Elle Bee, is it true that Gypsy has been diagnosed with MPD? She definitely seems to have multiple personality disorder. At first, I thought you were saying Munchausen by proxy. I'm not aware of that, but I would not be shocked. She downplays, but puts everything out for him, plus glue before house, the tape. They made brownies, exactly, and then had sex with him afterwards. Like, you're just as deranged as he is, girlfriend. I'm sorry.
He's the one that did the actual kill, not me. I can't kill anyone. That's why he's in trouble to begin with.
That's when I realized it was a BB gun.
You know, in certain documentaries and transcripts and stuff like that, some people are like, oh well, she didn't know it was a BB gun. No, I knew it was a BB gun.
Okay.
So
you didn't think it was going to kill her or anything?
no.
Okay.
All right, so clearly she contradicts herself in that one. Now we're going to talk about her addiction because she came out in the documentary to talk about her addiction, to say that she, was an addict, something that had never came out before throughout the whole situation happening, going missing, finding Dee Dee, her getting the plea deal, Nicholas's trial. I never remember anything like that coming out. That came out through the documentary, and she said, I've never told anybody about this. She tells Kale that her mom knew. Not only did her mom know, but her mom was the one feeding her this medication. However, on prison confessions, she says that her mom did not know, and she lied to her mom when her mom started suspecting.
In the book too, you talked about your I don't want to call it an addiction because I don't necessarily think that you called it an addiction. Do you think that you had an addiction?
I absolutely do think that it was an addiction to painkillers.
Yeah.
Yes.
So by accident, or did you were you already taking them and you felt the effects, and so you eventually got to a point where you were abusing them, or do you think that it was more by accident?
And if I have any recovering addicts in the chat, can you guys let me know if you know what medication you were addicted to? Because in the documentary, she says Vicodin, and with Kale, she says oxycodone, which I looked it up to see if it's the same medication, and it's not. They're both pain medication, I think it said. Oxycodone. Yeah, they're both pain medication, but they're not the same medication. But she gets it wrong. So you guys let me know if you're a recovering addict, is that something that you would get wrong?
It was originally my first exposure was from pain medication from after having surgery.
Right.
And so that was accidental. So it started off with, okay, they prescribed me this pain medicine. Oh, it makes me feel different. It makes me feel kind of numb. And so after that point, that's when I slowly started to take more and more and more and slowly abused it.
Okay. And your mom was aware of it, but didn't say anything.
Correct.
Because I think that's what I read in the book, and I was shocked by that.
Correct.
But that sort of fell into subconscious or conscious plan of her kind of keeping you close. It sort of helped keep you there, right?
Right. It's hard whenever you have someone, there's nobody there to tell you to stop or to pull you away from the edge, but instead encourage. So my mom was on pain medication herself, as well as Xanax. And so she would give me what we call a cocktail. And so that would be a mixture of oxycodone and Xanax together.
I know at one point you talked about.
It sounded like she was going to say oxycodone and then Xanax. Like she was going to say Vicodin and then she switched it to Xanax. I looked it up, is Vicodin the same as oxycodone? And it said no. I didn't put it on the screen because I was going to be covering up the next photo that's going to come up, but I'll read you guys what it said. No, Vicodin and oxycodone are not the same drug. Vicodin is a combination of hydrocodone and acetaminophen. Vicodin is a prescription medication used to treat moderate to severe pain. Oxycodone, a standalone opioid medication, oxycodone is used to treat moderate to severe pain. So Vicodin is a combination of hydrocodone and acetaminophen. Oxycodone is a standalone opioid medication. So, yeah. So that's the only reason I didn't put the photo of the description of the two up, because I'm about to show something else. But I was curious. I was like, why is she getting them confused? Is it the same thing? And the internet says it's not.
About how you took the last of your mom's pills, and then you guys had to go file a police report in order to get a refill, because that was the only way that you could get a refill on the narcotics.
Correct.
When you think about that now, how do you feel?
I mean, I definitely feel a lot of regrets because
Yeah.
that's, not behavior that I would ever condone or am proud of. But it does put it in perspective as to like what mind frame I was in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I just, but as a mom, you're about to be a mom.
Yes.
So it's like, could you even imagine like helping yourself and your daughter do something like that?
No, I would never. Like, I can't imagine. Like,
I would
no.
be so curious to know, if she was here today, like where her mind was at in that
Mhm.
moment. Cause did she need them at that point? Or do you think?
She did need them. We were in a car accident in
Mhm.
2001, and it left her with an injured leg.
Okay.
And her leg had never healed back fully.
Okay, so Kale asked, "Did your mom need these?" Because she said by the time she became an addict, she had to start taking her mom's medication, and she said, "Yeah, her mom needed those," which made me wonder. Okay, Dee Dee had a messed up foot from a car accident where it literally almost cut her foot off. She had plate screws, whatever, in her foot, and it was still very painful. So I'm wondering if Dee Dee, the mom, has this pain to where she's needing this medication, is she just going to be feeding it to her daughter? Or is she going to be like trying to protect it because it's something she needs? I don't. I try to think about it in a sensible matter, like, what would I do? Well, first off, I'm not gonna feed my kid pain meds anyways, but you know what I'm saying? Like, just trying to put myself in that position. If I had something that was very painful and I had medication to help me, would I just be feeding them to my child? No, I wouldn't. Okay. Let's listen here because now she's going to admit her mom knew nothing about it.
The doctors had prescribed me pain medication after the surgery. Well, when the pain medication ran out, I was still in pain. And my mother had a prescription for Vicodin.
She would give me what we call a cocktail. And so that would be a mixture of oxycodone and Xanax together.
And so when she was looking, I would just go and take one or two from her bottle. And I didn't know what addiction really was. I just knew that it was a craving that that's all I could think about. I wanted another one. I never told anyone about this before. My mother did start to suspect that I was taking her pain pills behind her back, and she confronted me about it, but I just, of course, lied to her.
So in the book, you talk about trying foods for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So there's that. Her mom knew, her mom did know. So another lie she's been caught in. And that's something you're not going to forget, Gypsy. I'm sorry. Time doesn't change if your mom was not only complicit in your addiction, but fed your addiction. That's not something that's going to change. She either did or she didn't know. There's no blurring the lines on that or confusing that. And I don't know if I feel like if I was Gypsy's PR team, I would just be like, girl, you got to stop doing interviews because the more interviews you do, the more you're literally getting caught up in lies. A girlfriend of mine in North Carolina says Janelle is on the search for a live-in nanny. Really? Tell your friend to hit me up. I would not be shocked, Duchess. I would not be shocked because that makes sense for what I've been told. Janelle likes to, and I'm not going to get off on a tangent too much about Janelle, but Janelle likes to leave the house a lot. CPS is breathing down her throat. So they don't want Jace babysitting the kids due to his mental health. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And let me tell you, if she's on the hunt for a live-in nanny, she's not going to do background checks more than likely. If she does, it will only be due to all the backlash she got when she left her kids for 3 weeks when she went to North Carolina. All right, let's continue listening. Now we're going to talk about the food because Gypsy had a feeding tube, right? Now, Gypsy was like 8 years old when she got the feeding tube, I think it was. I have a 7-year-old right now who literally has celiac. And even with her celiac, she wants to eat everything that she can, right? And before we realized she had celiac, she did eat everything that she could. And even with her having celiac, sometimes we still, here and there, we let her have things here and there, whatever. But so she was like 8 when she got her feeding tube. Gypsy likes to portray this narrative that she only ate via her feeding tube, and that when she got out of prison, she was eating food for the first time. Her mama didn't let her have food. So it was all these foods that she tried for the first time, which I don't think that's the truth. Up until 8 years old, she ate normal, and then even she said the majority of the time she used her feeding tube, but not all of the time. The majority of the time. And then her grandfather's going to talk about how when he had her, she ate regular food, whatever they cooked. So I'm not buying this whole, I had to try all these foods. I didn't eat hardly anything. I'm not buying it. Let's listen.
And having your salivary glands taken out, what does that even mean? And when you say that you were trying foods for the first time, what were some of the things that you experienced with eating certain foods for the first time?
So when I say, eating certain foods for the first time, it means that I've never tried it before.
Okay.
So certain foods my mother never let me eat, or the majority of my nutrition came from my feeding tube.
Right.
And formula based nutrition.
When you were in the hospital, I took care of Gypsy. She would eat with us at the table. Some French fries or anything we cooked. She didn't use no feeding machine.
She would eat anything we had. She didn't use no feeding machine. Tracy, I want to say thank you so much. Yesterday I did not work, and today I've been working all day on this video. So my YouTube channel is taking a hit lately from having to take off so much. So thank you so much for that super chat. I appreciate that so much. Yes, she loved Pepsi. I mean, come on. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, her grandpa says when she ate with us, she ate whatever. She did not use her feeding tube with us. And she stayed with them for a few weeks while her mom was in the hospital after the wreck. Her mom was in the hospital and she lived with them. So she ate whatever. And then when her mom came home from the hospital, her mom came home there. Let's continue.
Apparently, Dee Dee had suggested to different doctors that Gypsy was not getting enough calories to allow her to gain weight, meaning by mouth, which is just wild because all of that was a lie.
The documents that we saw, Gypsy, said that you have a fear of eating.
That's ridiculous. Is that something like my mom said?
Yes.
Wow, no, I never had a fear of eating.
So, never had a fear of eating. Her doctor said that when Dee Dee came in saying that she wasn't getting enough nutrition from what she was eating, the doctor was like, no, that's BS. We all know she loves the McDonald's fries. Yeah, so I'm not buying it. Was Dee Dee really in a car accident? Yes. Now that was verified through various family members because it literally almost took her foot off, and she had to have plates put in her foot. So that was legit. Now, whether or not Gypsy was in the car when it happened, I question that one because Gypsy said that she and her mom was in an accident. Christy said Gypsy and Dee Dee was in an accident, but I don't know. All right, now, she also lied about how she found the dating site. The dating site where she come to find Nicholas Godejohn. I mean, here she is. She's this girl that's just been sheltered and she has no idea about anything. So how do you come across a dating site? So I thought that was a good question that Kale asked. How did you come across the dating site? However, I'm just like, I feel like, I guess because Kale has not studied this case enough, that she, as within 10 minutes of me listening to this podcast, I was like, wait, that's a lie. I've heard different. That's a lie. I've heard different. So I was able to immediately notice the lies and go find where she says something different. But Kale was not able to.
How did you know about like a dating site?
I seen a commercial for it on TV.
Yeah.
It was like Christian Mingle or something like that.
Yeah.
That night, we went to sleep, and she took her sleeping meds that she takes every night, and I went to my bedroom, and I started talking with a neighbor on Facebook about Dan. She's like, oh, you should get on that online dating website called ChristianDatingForFree.com. And after looking at a couple of dozen profiles, I came across a profile that stood out.
That's a good question. That's a good question, Annie. How does she get the wigs? Like, and here's the thing: the Cinderella wig, the white one, sure, okay, but the red and black one, the sexy lingerie get-ups. I thought she said it was a BDSM website where she wore costumes and did cosplay. But how is she paying for them? How is she getting them shipped to her house and her mom not knowing? Is she watching the mail to make sure? Like, who bought them? How did her mom never catch them coming in? I don't know. I think that she had more freedom than she led us to believe. I got some notes here just to make sure I. There were other things that I wanted to make sure. Okay. So Gypsy, Ruby was Gypsy's alter ego. Let me find a photo of her.
Well, how would you feel if, like, the woman's unemployed altogether? Like, is that bad too?
No, I mean, don't give a
All right.
Bear with me. See, well, that only shows, let's see. Okay, see the get up? These pictures were approximately 2 weeks before the murder. You know what they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, although one word comes to mind, then the rest. Premeditated. This is Gypsy licking a knife. So, yeah, I guess she could have stole it. Yeah, when they were out and about, like at the mall and stuff, maybe she could have stole it. That's very possible. But yeah, Gypsy, you know, has told us how isolated she was and how deprived she was of any sort of normalcy. She's talked a lot about how her mom kept her either at home or in a hospital. However, and so much so that she said her first day in prison, she felt free. She was like, as crazy as that sounds, my first day in prison, I felt free. In the prison documentary, they interviewed the movie theater manager who said that Gypsy and Dee Dee came to the theater around 3 times a week. Every week, 3 times a week they came. So much so that Gypsy would be like, when they would do fundraisers for people with cancer and things like that. I haven't seen that, Bella. Where did they speculate she got Ruby from? When they would do fundraisers, they would use Gypsy's photo on the flyers and things like that. This lady had multiple pictures of her with Gypsy because Gypsy was such a regular at the movie theater. She said like 3 times a week. Gypsy also went to many sci-fi and fantasy conventions. That's where she met Dan. We have, photos of her dressed up. She went to Disney several times. Also, thank you, Meg. Thank you so much. Also, Gypsy went to several events where she met country music artists. Miranda Lambert was just on the Theo Vaughn podcast recently, where she talked about how she met Gypsy several times. And she said, not just me, but pretty much every big name artist in the industry back then, every country music artist in the industry back then pretty much met Gypsy because she was like always like invited to these functions to meet these celebrities. Okay. The Make-A-Wish, she got the Make-A-Wish a few times. Let's see. So yes, I don't think she was as isolated as she has us to believe because clearly, I mean, she was out and about a lot. Now, one thing in Kale's podcast that I just wish Kale would have had more knowledge about the situation to ask her some questions, about the phone. Because on the prison confessions, Gypsy goes from it was my phone, I dropped it while I was leaving, to it was my mom's phone. So she changes that from hers to her mom's. Oh, another thing in Kale's podcast, as well as on the prison confessions, she talks about her idea of a relationship was based off Disney movies. She's like, that's all I had to go off of. All I had to go off of was what I watched on TV, and all I watched was Disney movies. So my idea of like what should happen is a man should come save me. I should have a Prince Charming who should come save me, and we would live happily ever after. And I'm like, you mean to tell me that's what you thought? But meanwhile, you did not have a dad in your home. Your mom talked about how your dad wasn't crap, how he left her for Christy and, had other kids that, didn't want to have anything to do with you. That's what you looked at the movies that you were watching. Oh, she also says that she believed in Santa Claus until she was in prison. Now, she didn't say that on the podcast. She said that on TikTok. She said that on TikTok at one point. Oh, wow, Bella, I did not know that. I need to look into that. I did not know that. So, yeah, she says that her only idea of a relationship was based off the movies, and that's what she thought should happen. Jip doesn't know which storyline she wants to go with. From innocent girl to man-eater manipulator, whenever her ego gets stroked. I agree. And the thing that Spidey, the behavioral arts body language expert, said is when you're telling the truth, it doesn't change. Little minimum details might get changed that you forget over time. But something as important as if your mom knew about your addiction and if she was feeding you your addiction, you're not going to forget that. If you shot your mom with a gun that you knew was a BB gun and wasn't going to really hurt her, versus if you shot her with what you thought was a real gun and you thought she was about to go down, you're not going to forget those details. But yeah, she says her mom, this is something else that I thought was interesting, okay? She says her mom chained her up for 2 weeks, yet she never said what her punishment was when she admitted to getting caught on Facebook multiple times, even after running away. In the prison documentary, she said that she kept getting caught on Facebook, even after running away. But she didn't say, and my mom beat me, and my mom chained me up again. No punishment that she talked about, right? She also says that her mom isn't a monster and she has empathy for her. She says her mom is not a monster. She has empathy for her. And that all she did when she got out of prison or before she got out was she just started telling her story. She didn't want to paint her mom to be this monster. That's not what she wanted to do. She just wanted to tell her story. Her mom's not a monster. She loves her mom. Her mom chained her up, abused her. She talked about her mom hitting her with coat hangers, hitting her with her fist in her thigh. She talked about her mom putting a voodoo hex on her. She talked about her mom poisoning Gypsy's stepmom. She believed that her mom, Didi, put Roundup weed killer in her step-grandmother, Gypsy's step-grandmother's food. But she is saddened that her mom is painted to be this monster. That's not what her intent was. She hates that happened. She has empathy for her, and she's not a monster. Girl, what? 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 Also, in the Prison Confessions, if you haven't watched it, it's on Netflix, I think, or Philo. There's things that the producers know that Gypsy and Rod didn't know, like the BB gun situation, Gypsy shooting Dee Dee. When they brought that up to Christy, they're like, so Gypsy told us that one day she shot Dee Dee with a BB gun. Christy's like, what? I didn't know that. She was like, you didn't know that? She was like, nope, but good for her. Also, they talked to Rod about things. Gypsy said that Dee Dee told her that you once threw her across the room. I didn't know that. I didn't know she told her that. I didn't do that. I had no idea that Dee Dee was telling Gypsy those types of things. Dee Dee told Gypsy that you called her the R word after one of her events that she participated in, like the Special Olympics event for, kids in wheelchairs, that you went, but that you called her the R word. Gypsy never told me that. I had no idea that this is what she was telling Gypsy. But my thing is, if you really believe these things of what your mom's telling you, you have your mom offed, you end up in prison, and then you reach out to your dad, wouldn't that be the first thing that you say? Like, listen, my mom told me that you did these things to me, that you physically assaulted me or threw me across the room as a baby, that you called me names. So I want to know what's happening. Like, why weren't you in my life? You wouldn't withhold these things, would you? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, honestly. I guess I can never say what I would do in those positions, but I have to feel like I'd be like, why did you do those things? If I believed him, I'd be like, why did you do that to me? And give him the opportunity to be like, I didn't. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, also in where she talks about the bottle, she never talks about that being the reason maybe her teeth rotted. On the Prison Confessions documentary, she talks about her teeth, about how they rotted out of her mouth and how she had a bad overbite. But she says she believed and they speculated it was from the medication or the acid reflux that she had. She never says, maybe I had bottle rot. Considering I drank the bottle for 24 years or however long it was. Never does she say, I drank a bottle and maybe that's why my teeth rotted out of my mouth. Nope. So I'm calling BS on a lot of this. And there's also things that was mentioned in the podcast. If you haven't listened to the podcast, go listen to it. Let's see. We've been going on for about an hour. It's late. I know you guys. So a couple of things that was mentioned on the podcast that we're not talking about really, but I'll go over them. Is Gypsy has another sister besides Mia, that Rod got another girl pregnant around the same time, 5 months before or after Dee Dee. They don't specify if it was before or after. However, it's in the book that she has another sister allegedly, and that it's Rod's daughter, and that Rod was 17. He got Dee Dee pregnant and got this other woman pregnant 5 months apart, and he made the decision to be with Dee Dee. Also, they talk about how she offered to give Ryan a sit down, Ryan Anderson. She says, we're about to be divorced. Our divorce is about to be final. And I actually offered to do a sit down with him to give him closure, but he rejected it. Ryan Anderson rejected a sit down with Gypsy Rose Blanchard, according to Gypsy, because he said it would be too difficult. So she said she offered it and he declined it. They also talk about Gypsy's genetic disorder and if she, who they think she got it from, if she just developed it, if her daughter could have it, and her daughter could potentially have this genetic disorder that she does in fact have. They talk about her grandpa and how he feels about the book coming out. Gypsy and Dee Dee had nicknames for each other, Baby and Honey. I don't think I've ever heard that one. I don't think so. There's more discussions about Nicholas. Gypsy talks about how she was in prison with another famous inmate, Pam. There was a show called Something About Pam. Also, Gypsy, Kale tells Gypsy that she dated an inmate in Missouri, a federal inmate. Kale's like, yeah, I once dated a guy that was in prison in Missouri. Never heard that. Well, her dad her dad was recently tested according to Gypsy, and he tested negative for the disorder, but I don't know if it's one of those things that it comes from the father's side. The way that Gypsy talked about it, it didn't sound like it, because she said, my dad was tested, he doesn't have it. We can't test my mom because you need blood, and obviously. But she said that that none of her moms, like her grandparents, they did not display signs of it. So they don't know where it came from exactly. That you can develop it as you get older. I don't know. She also talked about the point of the book is survival. Now, Kale told Gypsy, because Kale was like, what do you plan to do? Like, what do you want to do moving forward? And Gypsy said that she wants to go to school. She wants to possibly get into cosmetology. And Kale was like, you could do a podcast. And Gypsy's like, yeah, I could, because I'm a talker. And Kale said, oh, yeah, you could start a podcast under Killer, which is Kale's production company, which is Kale's podcast production company. I'm like, that's wild. You could be like, you could work for Killer. Gypsy could work for Killer, and then Kale would have a killer working for her. So yeah, it was an interesting, listen, considering, because what did Colby say? I missed it. Ew. See, I haven't read the book yet. Colby, if you want to send me the book, I'll go over it, and we can do one of these things where we highlight the most craziest, situations or whatever. I know, right? Could you imagine the advertisement or the commercials for Gypsy working for Kale? A Killer production presents a killer. Anyways, the chromosomal deletion disorder, kids have a 50% chance of getting it. Yeah, so that's what she has. And Gypsy said that her and Ken have planned on having like 3 kids, but now that there's a chance that their kids could have this disorder, that they have to have that discussion again about if they're going to continue having kids. Anyways, you guys, it's late. I'm over an hour. I worked really hard on this. I've been working all day on this, and I didn't work yesterday. So I do appreciate you guys that came to hang out with me this late. A lot think her real dad is the doctor that was in her life the most, Dr. Binkerman or something. Rod has how many kids? Gypsy, Mia, the other one, and the boy, I think. So 4, I think. I don't think Rod's cute, but I'm like, what's going on with Rod? Let's see this guy. Whoa. Hold up. Wait. Now, I would say yeah. I'm not gonna speculate. I mean, but they kind of look alike. Okay. So this is the doctor. I'm confused. Thank you, TK. Thank you so much. This is her doctor. That's bonkers. I've never heard this before, but they do look alike. That's pretty insane. Oh my goodness. Okay, you guys, I worked my little tush off on this, and it's Friday, so I'll probably have to work sometime this weekend. I think she scammed Rob for child support, and the doctor took care of them. If you see his profile, you'll die. Wait, okay, hold on. What do you mean? His profile, like. I'm trying to find what you mean, like his profile. Like the side profile, or you talking about like his side profile? Well, that's interesting. I'm trying to find a side profile. How do you say this? Where does he live? Where does Dr. Beckerman live? Does anybody know? Oh, that's what you're talking about? Okay. That's interesting. Well, I wouldn't be shocked. Ryan need to get a DNA test. I'm just saying. Just in case, you never know. Because he's about to be taking care of a baby and everything, you know, like for the bayou to Missouri. So he lives down on the bayou. Okay, then. You guys have your thoughts in the comment section below. Gypsy busted in many lies. I didn't even include all the lies in here because it just took me so long. He followed them or they followed him to hospitals. Diddy was a nurse at one stage. She was. I'm going to do a deep dive on this. He was probably, I think he was like, Diddy, I'll pay you, but you got to keep it a secret. Maybe he was married. That's so. And maybe that's why Diddy wanted to keep Rod away because she thought like if Rod was around, he might pick up on it. Like this kid don't look like me, don't act like me. I don't know. That's so wild. You guys have your thoughts in the comment section below. You love my makeup. Thank you. I've been wearing it since like 10 o'clock this morning. But you guys leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I appreciate y'all. Please do me a huge favor. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Literally like 60% of the people that watch my videos are not even subscribed. So please do me a huge favor. I was hoping to hit my 100,000 subscriber goal by Christmas. It's not going to happen, but maybe by next Christmas. So you guys do me a favor. Hit the thumbs up button. Hit the subscribe button on your way out. And I will probably be live sometime over the weekend just to kind of make up for lost time this past week. But anyways, you guys, I will see y'all in the next one. Bye, everyone.